morning, my friends in Christ. Welcome to Unlike Other Nations. Once again, we come to you on this beautiful Sunday morning to share a word with you, a word of hope, a word of faith in our, shall we say, difficult and trying times, but always with faith in the good Lord. I'm Father Tom Coys.
And I'm John Coys, Father Tom's brother.
We are truly brothers. We are family.
Indeed.
As it is. And even though we love each other and get along with each other so well, we don't always agree.
Sometimes we have different opinions.
Sometimes that is the way it is. And we learn from each other. And I hope you can learn from us. John, today I want to touch on a topic that is very much in the news today, very much in my mind, very much a part of the history of this wonderful land of ours, these United States of America. That would be the question, the issue of the relationship between the church and the state. We are getting very close to a very important election, a referendum on which way we want to see our country go. There's been debates, of course. There's been advertisements. There's been political speeches. And I truly encourage all those who love this dear land to think very carefully about what kind of message we send, and of course the issue of how Christians relate to how any religious people relate to the political world that we live in this election time. So that's the question I want to bring up today. It's kind of a sticky.
Yeah, we talked about we're going to discuss the sensitive subject of the separation of church and state. Some people claim it doesn't really exist. It's not in the Constitution, our Constitution. But you've heard that phrase, for a couple of centuries.
It began. It's a matter of fact, we have a clip of that, John.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, we're going to listen to Thomas Jefferson. Before we listen, I have to say, I just came back. I was so blessed to have been able to visit a number of historical spots. I'm celebrating my 25th anniversary of priesthood here this year, and went to visit a number of the American historical sites. We started with Concord and Lexington, which is where the Battle of the American Revolution, of course, began, and ended outside of Appomattox, which was where the
Civil
War almost ended. Exactly. It was where Lee
surrendered to Grant. Yeah.
Exactly. And in between there are many places we was able to see. If you are ever in Virginia, please make it an effort to go visit some of those sites. Almost 80% of the battles of the American Civil War took place on Virginian soil. And Thomas Jefferson's home of Monticello, of course, is there, just outside of Charleston, Virginia. You can take a nickel out, look on the back of a nickel, and see his little house right there. And
it's a pretty big house.
It's pretty big. It's beautiful. And, of course, he was the one who first used the phrase, a wall between church and state. He was responding to a letter from the Baptist church up in the New England area that were afraid. They were afraid that they were going to be pushed out because they were a small congregation. And they were a little worried about those folks in Massachusetts and other areas around, that each state, each sovereignty would establish its own religion. And, of course, that would spell doom for the smaller religions, as it were. So that's the context, I believe, that is very important for us to understand what the context of that phraseology came from. Let's listen to what Thomas Jefferson said about this.
Believing with you that religion is a matter which lies solely between man and his God, I contemplate with sovereign reverence that act of the whole American people, which declared that their legislature should make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state. Thomas Jefferson.
Old TJ.
We still use that phrase today. It's very much in the common language today, that wall of separation.
Wall of separation of church and state. And it was made even more popular in 1943 when the Everson versus the Board of Education case came down. And it was it was a case about funding busing for Catholic schools, actually. And Justice Hugo Black mentioned that he believes that wall of separation between church and state must be impregnable. John, what I want our listeners to consider as we think about this is to revisit this issue and rethink the context in which it was born and the meaning of these words, which I think history has a way of affecting our understanding of things that we think are eternal or are basic. Perhaps they're not so eternal, so perhaps they're not so absolute as we first think them to be. First of all, to understand the context of the infancy of the United States of America. Jefferson at this point, and many of the other founding fathers, of course, had this sense of the need to protect our land from a dominant denomination.
Yes.
They were very competitive, as many denominations are today as well. You can't help but be. But I truly believe we are living more in a time now when that competitive fear needs to be replaced a little bit more with a cooperative unity within the Christian world itself. And I see that fear that was in the infancy of the United States is still legitimate. It still has its place, but it perhaps is not so radical. Does that make any sense?
Yes, yes. I don't see a lot of fear amongst religions today. Do you? I mean, there's a bit of competitiveness, if you will, between denominations for souls, for people in the pews and so forth.
Well, if Illinois, where we're coming from, Chicago, Illinois, if Illinois were to make a rule that said all Presbyterian churches will receive $1,000 a month and no others, we'd hear a great deal of outcry.
Hue and cry from all
the rest. We don't hear that right now. However, there's a sense of silencing some of the Christian messages, especially the more difficult, controversial moral principles that have been a part of Christianity and really this Western civilization. The battles over the definition of marriage is essential.
It's raging now.
It's raging now, and those who may proclaim a view of marriage that's between one man and one woman are poised to be thought of as criminals vis-a-vis hate speech laws. It's a new area of addressing this issue of the relationship between church and state. We need some kind of religious freedom. Absolutely, we need some kind of separation between church and state. But does the wall need to be so high? I think if we look at our present context, we should see that there's a greater relationship, a greater ambiance, a greater friendship between the two areas of life. You know, religion and state, church and state are not concepts like mathematical concepts or scientific chemical concepts. If I say there needs to be a separation between odd numbers and even numbers, everyone would obviously agree. Sure. And if someone were to argue, no, we should have some even numbers that are odd and some odd numbers that are even, we might say, well, you're changing the whole lexicon of mathematics. Right. You can't do that. It won't work. Or if I were to say, we need to have a better relationship between hydro and glycerin, or the chemicals that make up hydroglycerin. And if we were to put them together, we must legislate the fact that these two chemicals must belong together more easily without exploding. Well, we'd be ridiculed out of most science rooms and the rest. But I want us to reconsider the concept of church, the concept of state are not like those. A church is harder to define.
Yes.
What the church is harder to define. What a state is, what our state is more difficult to define. Let's review, though, I have a clip here about, again, this is another clip from a wonderful DVD called Faith of Our Fathers. It's a beautiful, I want to put a plug in for them because you can go online and get it. It has a wonderful collection of these historical quotes. We're looking for no religious tests, and because this was a part of the spirit of the separation of church and state. John, give us that.
No religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. Article 6, Section 3.
I think most of us realize that. Maybe we don't know the exact article in the Constitution, but
isn't that a good concept? Don't you agree with that? That no religious test should be given anybody serving in a governmental
I used
role?
to think that was a fine formulation.
But you don't anymore.
Well, in this sense, it's a good test. And many people are going to be marching to the polls in a couple of weeks. And I'm very glad that when we go into a polling place, we're not asked, and what religion are you, sir?
Chef, absolutely.
Can you please explain what denomination or et cetera are you? No, we separate that. But if the truth be told, we need to revisit the sense of maybe a basic test of religion. I think 9/11 has brought us to that point. A little bit more when we come back. Stay tuned and tell others to tune into A Nation Unlike Other Nations here on WYLL, the greatest Christian talk station.